Thank you. So you heard about Cherry, you know what it is now, so you know everything. Basically, the only thing we have to do is to make it into products, right? And that's why we're here. The idea is to drive Cherry into products. And well, if we look at the history of Cherry, well, you've seen plenty of research been done. And that led to the proof that the technology was possible, was made available through prototypes, was proven to work. And after 14 years of research, or maybe a bit more, we still don't have products in the sense that we still can't go to a shop or on Amazon or whatever and buy a Cherry product, which means we need to do something more to get this to happen, right? And we need to have a mix of awareness, make sure that people know about it, desirability, to make sure that, well, industry as a whole wants to implement it, and feasibility, making sure that we have the technological elements available for the industry to adopt, because if you don't have them, won't happen. So that's an adoption problem, and it has been solved in the past, going from a specification to actual products. If you look at these logos here, these are organizations that have managed to push the industry to evolve, to move, and to get to a real product that you can buy in the stores. So it has been done before, and in each of these cases, what has happened is that an industry association has pushed the standard into the industry to get them into products. So that's more or less what we have to do. And that's why the Cherry Alliance has been formed. And, well, that's the idea. And I'm happy to say that we are officially launching today, even though, well, we have been working on the project for some time, and you will see that in the next slide. But I'm really happy to say that from today, officially, right now, we are getting the press release out, and well, the world will be able to know that we have launched and we are significant, and we are trying to push Cherry out. So, well, thank you. So I was talking about the journey just for fun. Basically, early 2023, we realized that we would have a gap if we tried to introduce the technology like this in the open. It needed something more, like the Cherry Alliance. And, well, took some time to get everyone excited, having a lot of phone calls with people who were involved, for example, in the SBD and in other, other parts of the industry. At the end of the year, last year, we tried to find how to do it, which format, how to create such an entity. In February this year, we started a community interest company, which is the same format as Low-Risk, for example, or other companies that are non-profit but still want to operate as a company. And well, we signed up the first members in May, had a lot of work, started some working groups, and in fact, today we are able to launch. So it's an independent company. We really insisted on that. We wanted to be agnostic to the ISA, so the type of instruction. So it could be ARM, could be Intel, could be MIPS, could be RISC-V, anything. The idea is that we need a focal point for Cherry. So Cherry is an addition to the ISA. We need something agnostic to the ISA. Needs to be country agnostic. A lot of work has been done in UK, and that's really great. And thank you again for that. We need to go beyond the UK, right? We need to be international. And that's really important because, well, most products are not done here, right? We need to have the whole industry moving. And it's not just one company. It's not even a bunch of companies. It needs to be adopted by the whole industry. So that's all electronics companies. For Cherry to be in every product, we need every company building products or product elements to participate. So it is really a big effort. So it won't take 1 year. It will be a lot longer, but we need to continue pushing, to continue being behind to make sure that it will happen. And we are really, really glad to see that UK has been leading in that area. And in fact, DCIT helped us start up the Cherry Alliance because, when you start these kind of things, you need money. For example, for the organization of this conference, it is important to have funds to get started. So it is good to be supported, but we don't want longer term to depend on public money. We want to be, we are here for the long term, so we want to be sustainable from this point of view. So the idea was to say, this is an industry-owned association. It needs to be financed by the members. And that's what we are doing. So all the companies that join the Alliance would help financing the operation. And as more companies grow, we can do more things and go faster. That's the idea. And not just financial support, but human support as well. The Cherry Alliance is, a bunch of people giving time to the organization. But mostly that's it, right? The whole manpower would come from the members who joined forces into working groups and get things to progress together by collaborating. So if I manage to click, yes. So here in this room, we have 3 of the 4 founding members, founding directors of the Cherry Alliance. So that's really great. And as I said, it's a community interest company, and which means for those who are not familiar with that, we are audited on the purpose as well. So it's not just we are here to do whatever we want. We have defined a purpose, which is the progress of Cherry, adoption of Cherry, and we are audited around that. The idea is that we work collaboratively. So I said members are really providing all the human capital. We talked about that earlier. And we want to have a structure that is fairly standard, I would say, in industry organizations. The CIC, the Community Interest Company, is the hosting structure, but basically the structure of decisions and the organization of the group will come from governing boards, committees, and working groups. So all of this needs to be put in place. For now, we have the CIC, the working groups. We have some groups started, and we'll organize very soon the elections for the governing board. The thing is that we waited to have enough members to have a meaningful election. If you have just 2 members, that's not really democratic. So we wanted to have this in place first, the launch first, and then having the governing board formed and the committees. And we have 2 types of members. We have the full members, which are companies helping financing the Alliance. And we have the community, because it's important to stay connected, for example, with the research community or with the government community. And this is free membership. So that's how we operate, and that's how we have formed all the legal infrastructure that we inherited mostly from low risk. So we used the experience here because it's important not to reinvent the wheel. That's something we learned also today. And some of you may have peeked a bit at the banner outside, but the big reveal here of the first batch of members, which we now have called founding members of the Alliance, is here. So this is it. So here you see all the members of the Alliance. And the great thing about this is that it is exactly what we wanted. We wanted a mix of different types of organizations, not just all research or all small startups or whatever. We wanted a mix because that's needed in an ecosystem. And again, we had a big speech on the ecosystems. It is important to have variety and, well, types of organizations, but also geographic variety. We have people coming from Taiwan, we have people in India, we have people in the US with SRI, for example, people in Europe. So it is a diverse community, and this is really important. And also, well, we have big names. Well, you see Google, for example, in the middle. Probably you know it. So it is important to have also these role models for other companies to say, oh, wow, this big company is involved in Cherry. That means I probably have to look at it and see whether that is something that I need to implement in my products. So this is important to have role models like that. But of course, it is important also to have them as members because, well, we depend on our members to do work to progress towards our goals, and having people, well, companies with more people help us being more effective in these working groups, etc. And also, we are grateful to have the academia and research organizations, because they have the expertise that needs to be diffused into the industry. So we need to have this connection happening, having this network being done to make sure that, well, this is actually happening. This is actually going to the industry in the right way. So thank you for all the members who have signed up to now. And it is not finished. We will have more members, and well, I have not slide on that, but in fact, we are attracting other members. We have just signed one yesterday night before. Well, I was in the train and sending things through DocuSign. So it is continuing. We continue to attract new members, and well, very soon, and they allowed me to tell it, even though they haven't signed, we'll have a major European company as well in our membership, which means international operations, international well, visibility, and also, well, again, having another role model for other companies. So it is important to continue growing the membership, and we are trying to grow that. So our goal is to promote Cherry, and how we do this is through different activities. There are technical activities because, well, Cherry is, well, a set of specifications or recommendations. We need to adapt that in a format that needs to be usable by the industry. So it needs to be aligned. For example, if there's a Cherry on ARM and a Cherry on RISC-V, how do we make sure that code written for Cherry works on both? We don't want to have to re-adapt code that has been adapted. That wouldn't make sense. How do we make sure that we ensure compliance so that, well, when you have a product that claims to be Cherry, it's really Cherry, right? It's not something they have kind of done quickly with a few features. How do we ensure that best practices are spread throughout the industry? How make sure that engineers are trained, well, understand how to use Cherry and to adapt the code, etc. So this is part of the technical element. Of course, we need to promote as well Cherry. We need to make sure that people know about it, and that's why it is important to have non-technical people in the room to be able to, well, also teach and help convince people in a different way. Well, Robert is able to convince engineers that Cherry is formally safe and works well because of so many reasons that are written in very technical language. This is great for engineers, but we have to convince all the other people in the world that Cherry needs to be adopted. And most of them will not like this kind of language and will prefer to have something more digestible. So we have to do this kind of effort and translation, in fact, from technical language to normal language, I would say. And this has to go through the media, through the different channels for communication to the different people who would be able to influence the decisions. And it could go through regulations or, well, incentives from governments. And this is also part of the idea. And that's why we have members from government entities, because it is important that they are part of the discussion. They also understand how they can influence, because they play a big part in the solution. And, well, lastly, the community support. We see that, it is important to have a lot of open elements in an adoption of a technology. And having open source means having to manage communities, having to, not manage, but, encourage communities to work on things that would help progress. And that means, some kind of coordination, some kind of collaboration with existing communities. And this is something that needs to have some kind of focal point. And that's what the Alliance is bringing here as well. It is easier when there's one place to find information to we have to collaborate, let's do it as part of the Alliance, because it is where things naturally happen when it's related to Cherry. So that's really what we are trying to build. And of course, anything else that would be related to that, that would help Cherry progress in the industry. So again, to hammer the point, really we are here to make sure that Cherry spreads internationally. We are doing it in an agile way. So we've talked about the need for entrepreneurs in the formation of ecosystems. I'm an entrepreneur. That's why I think it is necessary to act like one, and it is necessary to be agile, to take whatever works and go with it. So we don't have any predefined roadmap for, let's do this and then this and then this. If we find the right partners, the right people to help us go into one particular direction that will help Cherry progress, then let's do it. And that's what we've done in the creation of the working groups. We found people interested in one topic. Well, just go together, discuss about it, produce something, and it will help progress. So that's really the idea. And that's what I mean by driven by industry needs. If we get enough companies, enough people building products, driving the requirements, then it will go faster, because what would be created, what would be aligned, regulated, or not regulated, but encouraged by examples and available documents, will be matching what the industry waits for. So that's really what we are trying to do. And again, this idea of focal point, having just one place to find things, one place to network around Cherry, etc., and helping our members work together as well, because we have diverse communities. So hopefully the idea is that they start working together and doing business together to get to products faster. And that's really the idea of the Alliance. The big problem we are trying to solve is how to stimulate the industry. You see here my picture of how I see things available in red or to be done in gray. Well, I think research, most of it, maybe I should put some gray here, most of it is there. We have seen prototypes, it works good. IP, we start to see some IP, and here maybe I'm a bit too optimistic. We need more, right? We need all processes to be Cherry. So it's something, or to have a Cherry option at least. So it's something that needs to grow. We have some software that has been ported, and we'll see also in another talk how to do that. But we see that already there are millions of lines of codes that have been ported. So it's already in progress and needs to continue. Tools are necessary as well. So this is progressing. But how do we get to the end users? We need chips, and we heard that this will come soon, so good. But we don't need just one chip. We need, well, right now we have tens of thousands of different chips in the industry. That means we have to be present in all these kind of variety of chips. So that means a lot of chip vendors to convince and to work with to make sure that they adopt Cherry. And then modules, products, users. So we need to get there. And of course, we are interested in all of that. And we are trying to get everything to work together, even though we started initially to focus more on the initial stages. We need to also work with the end users and the rest. And to convince people, companies, and organizations across this value chain, we have to have a different ways of talking to them, because you don't talk with the same message to engineers and non-engineers, but also to government, regulators, and to end users. It's a different message. And we need to highlight the benefits that we bring to each of these entities, each of these organizations. And well, for the government, regulators, etc., well, it is clearly the public interest. What they care about is protecting citizens, companies, economies, etc. And here we heard about the cost of cybersecurity worldwide, and the FBI has produced a report last year saying right now it's about 10 trillions. When you try to count 10 trillions, how much it is? It's 1, 2, 3, 1 million, 2 million. Each 3 seconds, it's a million, right? And 1 hour is 1 billion. So you see the cost when you start to count like that, and you realize, well, okay, that means we should really do something about it. And investing for government into cybersecurity really makes sense, because that's money going out very, very quickly. And well, we know that in some cases, going out to countries we don't want them to have the money. So yeah, it's something important. For them, this is clearly the message. For the end users, it is about risk reduction, cost reduction. Because for users, if they get hacked, well, that's a cost, right? It's a risk, a cost, because they are getting hacked. It's not a probability anymore. Almost everybody gets hacked. So in the best case, they lose time, which is money. In the worst case, they lose credibility, they lose assets, they lose business, and sometimes they just close down. So that's sometimes an existential risk. We need to make sure that they understand that there's at least some solutions to that. But these solutions require the whole value chain to evolve, so they need to demand that from their suppliers. So that's the message we need to get through as well for these users. And in the middle, we need to explain that, okay, security, you need to do an effort to implement security, to implement Cherry. Yes, it's an added cost, but as you develop new products, you always have a development cost. So it is no different than developing normal products. It's just that you need to include security as part of your definition of product, as part of your constraints. And all engineers know how to work with a set of constraints and produce something that works. So it's no different than what people already do. It's just that they need to think about it. So that's the thing. And then when Cherry is adopted, we've seen Robert showing some data. We've got some data as well from other sources that say basically Cherry doesn't add much cost to the solution. It's just that you need to adopt it in the first place, and that's really what what we need to get into the head of people. It doesn't need to cost more. It's just that you need to design it well at the beginning. So of course you have a bump in terms of investment, but afterwards it's the same, business as usual. So it is possible to have security in your product, and this is an opportunity. So this is the message we have to get through to the industry and make sure that everybody in the industry understands that. So, as I said, we are working on these topics, both on the marketing side, communication, trying to get this message through, and on the technical side, all the alignment, all the roadmap driving, for example, for Linux, how do we make sure that it's more efficient instead of having all people redoing the same things in different places. Why don't we work together, collaborate, and push in the right direction? So these are started already, a number of working groups. We want to start more, which means we need more people to get involved. And this is what we are doing. So of course, again, the message is we are trying to attract more members, make sure that more companies, more organizations get involved, and share the fact that we promote together the same technology, so we have a better voice, we have a better chance to be heard, and we accelerate the adoption of Cherry, which will benefit everyone who gets involved in Cherry. We'll also get all the collaterals around with the activation of the open source community, with the all the work that is done around, and the fact that we network means that we don't have to do all the parts ourselves. We have this idea of each of us bring something, and we put everything together, and we get a whole that has much more value. So that's really what we are trying to achieve. And hopefully we'll get there very soon, but we're here for the long term. So that's the message, and thank you for that.